Hey guys, tonight we're climbing into a rolling metal shoebox that smells like coffee, diesel fumes, and a faint hint of regret. The deadly life of a 1960s long-haul trucker hooked on speed pills. Not the modern trucker with podcasts, GPS, and a refrigerated snack drawer. I mean the real 1960s road warrior. A man who treats sleep like a rumor and thinks a balanced breakfast means cigarettes and whatever fell off the dashboard. And since this is our brand new channel, before you settle in, maybe take a second to hit like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what you find here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft white noise. Get cozy and tuck yourself into a safe modern bed where the only thing keeping you awake is stress, not a suspicious pill bottle labeled pep pills with no ingredients listed. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to drive 1,200 miles on 2 hours of sleep while your eyelids feel like wet sandbags? Have you ever wondered how a grown man could survive on diners, nicotine, and pharmaceutical ambition? What did long-haul truckers eat when their options were basically pie, beef, pie, or mysterious beef pie? Did they shower, or did they just accept the smell as part of their identity like a patriotic musk? How did they stay awake on endless highways before energy drinks existed? And why did society collectively decide the answer should be amphetamines in a paper cup? And what does it do to your brain when your entire job depends on never being tired, even though your body is actively begging you to collapse like a cheap folding chair? And now congratulations. You've just woken up at 1966. The radio is humming. Your coffee is burnt. Your truck is idling. Your back hurts like it's being haunted by the ghost of every pothole in Missouri, and somewhere in your shirt pocket, there's a tiny bottle of pills that promises you one thing: you will not sleep. Good luck. You open your eyes inside a sleeper cab that feels like a padded closet on wheels. The mattress is thin. The blanket smells like yesterday's cigarette smoke, and your spine pops in a way that suggests your skeleton is filing a formal complaint. Outside, the morning air is cold and full of diesel. Inside, the air is also diesel, plus coffee, sweat, and the distinct scent of a man who hasn't seen a proper shower since Eisenhower was emotionally relevant. And for a moment, you just lie there, blinking up at the cab ceiling like it personally offended you. Because you didn't sleep so much as you temporarily powered down like a machine that overheated and shut itself off to avoid catching fire. Your brain feels fuzzy, your eyelids feel swollen, and your tongue tastes like someone wrapped it in carpet and left it under the seat overnight. Everything in your body is stiff, cramped, and mildly angry, like your joints held a meeting while you were unconscious and voted unanimously to hate you. You roll onto your side, and the mattress makes a sound like wet cardboard surrendering. The sleeper cab isn't designed for comfort. It's designed for containment. It's a nap chamber, a rolling punishment closet. A place where you can technically rest, as long as your definition of rest includes waking up with a neck kink so severe you briefly forget your own name. You swing your legs out of the bunk and immediately regret it. Your boots are still on. Of course they are. In the world of 1960s, trucking, taking your boots off is a luxury, like owning a vacation home or having feelings. Your socks are damp with sweat. Your pants are wrinkled in ways that suggest they've fought wars. And somewhere in the folds of your shirt is a smell that can only be described as man who lives in a vehicle. You sit up slowly because if you do it too, because fast, you'll get dizzy and fall over, which would be humiliating because you're already inside a box. Falling inside a box is the kind of failure that sticks with you. Outside the cab window, the world is barely awake. The sky is pale. The parking lot is quiet. There are a few other trucks sitting like sleeping elephants, their engines humming softly, their drivers still collapsed inside them. A couple of men shuffle across the lot toward the diner, like zombies looking for pancakes instead of brains. And then you hear it, that sound, the engine idling, a low, steady rumble that shakes your bones. It's the heartbeat of your entire life now. The truck is alive. The truck is always alive. Even when you sleep, it's still running, still working, still breathing. You, on the other hand, are just a fragile, exhausted mammal wrapped in flannel and bad decisions. You reach for the coffee thermos because that's what you do. It's sitting there in the cup holder, like it's waiting to rescue you. You twist the lid off, take a sip, and immediately realize this coffee isn't coffee. It's punishment water. It's bitter, cold, strong enough to strip paint off a barn. It tastes like it was brewed using a cigarette butt and the emotional energy of a man who's been married 3 times. But you drink it anyway, because in 1966, the caffeine doesn't just wake you up. It reminds you that you're still participating in society. Your stomach tightens in protest. It doesn't want coffee. It wants a vegetable. It wants rest. It wants tenderness. But it's not going to get any of that. Your stomach is going to get diner food, cigarettes, and whatever the truck stop sells that technically counts as breakfast. So you take another sip. And now it's time to fully join the day. You climb forward into the driver's seat, which isn't really a seat so much as a vibrating chair of destiny. You settle into it, and the springs groan like they're disappointed you came back. Your hands go automatically to the wheel, and for a second, you just sit there, staring out at the highway. Because this is the part where your brain tries to negotiate. It tries to convince you that maybe you could sleep another hour, maybe you deserve it, maybe it's okay. Maybe you can ignore the schedule, ignore the freight, ignore the world. But then you remember, you're not just tired, you're behind. And being behind in trucking isn't like being behind on laundry. It's not like having a messy kitchen. It's being behind in a system that doesn't care if you're human. You can be behind in sleep, behind in meals, behind in emotional stability, but you can't be behind in miles. So you reach into your shirt pocket. And there it is, a tiny bottle, small, harmless looking, like breath mints for the soul. You shake it gently, and the pills rattle like they're eager, like they know you need them, like they're already whispering, "Come on, just one. You'll feel better." And you hesitate. Because some part of you knows this isn't normal. Some part of you remembers a time when waking up didn't require chemicals, when you could just sleep, when you didn't have to force your nervous system into overdrive like you're trying to start a lawnmower in winter. But that part of you is quiet now because the highway is waiting and the freight is waiting and the whole country is waiting for whatever you're hauling to show up on time. So some guy in an office can say, "Wow, great job, team," even though the team is just you and a bottle of pills. So you pop one, you swallow it, and you feel it hit your stomach like a coin dropped into a slot machine, and you wait. And there it is, that familiar tightening in your chest, that shift, that artificial clarity. Your eyes sharpen, your thoughts speed up, your fatigue gets shoved into a closet and locked inside. You're awake now, you're too awake. You inhale, you exhale, and you start moving. Because congratulations, it's morning in the 1960s. You're awake in a sleeper cab. You're barely human, and you're about to drive straight into the endless road like a man who's been folded, shaken, caffeinated, and chemically encouraged into existence. A true American hero. Or at least a man who hasn't fallen asleep yet. Either way, you can't make this up. Before you drive anywhere, you do the sacred 1960s tradition of walking around your truck like you're inspecting a wild animal that may or may not eat you. Tires? Questionable. Lights? Flickering like a haunted house. The trailer connection? Held together by faith, grease, and whatever the union handbook says you're allowed to ignore. Every part of this machine is enormous, which is comforting, until you remember that enormous things also crash enormous. You climb down from the cab like an old man getting out of a bathtub. Even though you're probably not that old, you just feel ancient. Trucking ages you in dog years. And honestly, even dogs get to lie down sometimes without a schedule. The cold air hits your face immediately, sharp and metallic, full of diesel exhaust and early morning dread. Your breath puffs out in little clouds, and for a second, you feel like you're starring in a gritty documentary called Man vs. Machine, except nobody's filming, and your only audience is a seagull sitting on a power line judging you silently. You start your walk around. Not because you love safety, but because you love not dying. The truck is towering over you, all steel and grime and stubbornness. The trailer stretches behind it like a giant rectangular promise that something expensive is inside. You squint at it the way a farmer squints at a fence he knows isn't going to survive the winter. First stop, the tires. You crouch down and stare at them like you're trying to read their thoughts. They're thick, scarred, covered in road dust and tiny, embedded sins. You kick one gently, the official method of inspection used by men who do not trust machines but also cannot afford therapy. The tire does nothing, which is a good sign. Tires are not supposed to react, but you lean closer anyway, looking for cracks, bulges, anything suspicious. Because these tires are carrying your entire life, and if one of them decides to quit, the truck isn't going to politely pull over. It's going to turn into a 40-ton suggestion that gravity is in charge now. You move on to the lights. You flip them on and step back, watching them blink weakly like someone trying to stay awake in a boring meeting. One headlight is bright. The other is dim and flickering, like it's haunted by the spirit of a dead firefly. You stare at it. It stares back. And you both silently agree to pretend this is fine. Because in 1966, the line between functional and good enough is extremely blurry. If it lights up at all, you count it as a victory. Like, sure, the light is flickering, but so is your will to live, and you're still going. Then you check the trailer connection. You walk toward that thick metal coupler where your truck meets the trailer, the place where enormous forces combine in holy union. It's greasy. It's dark. It's basically a mechanical handshake between two heavy objects that can kill you if they get bored. You bend down, you look at the locking jaws, the pin, the cables. Everything is in place, mostly. You tug on something and it wiggles, which makes your stomach tighten. Then you tug again and it stops wiggling, which is a relief, but also not comforting, because now you know wiggling was an option. This is how trucking works. A constant cycle of, is this safe? Followed by, I guess. You check the hoses, air lines, electrical lines, all the things that keep the trailer brakes from becoming decorative. You listen for hissing. Any tiny leak is basically the truck whispering, I might betray you, later. But you don't hear anything. So you keep going. You walk along the trailer, running your hand across the side. The metal is cold and rough. It smells like oil, dirt, and whatever the inside cargo smells like through pure imagination. Sometimes it's grain, sometimes it's machine parts. Sometimes it's something you're not allowed to ask about. You're not paid to wonder. You're paid to deliver. You check the trailer tires too. More kicking, more crouching, more pretending you have the knees of a man who isn't held together by coffee. Then you check the load, not the actual cargo. You don't have X-ray vision. You check the seals, the locks, the straps, if you can see them. You make sure nobody has tampered with anything. Because truck stops are strange little ecosystems. Half rest stop, half marketplace, half place where people vanish mysteriously into the night and nobody asks questions. You glance around the lot. A man in a denim jacket is walking slowly with a cup of coffee, staring into space like he's still half asleep. Another guy is washing his windshield with a squeegee that looks like it's seen combat. Somewhere, a dog barks. Everything feels calm, which, in trucking, is suspicious. You finally circle back to the front of the truck. And now comes the part where you climb back into the cab and pray nothing important was overlooked. Because no matter how carefully you inspect, there's always the hidden threat. The bolt that's loosening, the belt that's fraying, the part that's about to snap at the worst possible moment. And the scariest part, you won't hear it until it's happening. You'll be driving down the highway at 55 miles an hour, your mind buzzing from speed pills and coffee, and suddenly you'll hear a noise that sounds like the universe tearing a piece of paper. And then you'll have about 2 seconds to respond like a professional. So, you do your final check, you wipe your hands on your jeans, you look at your truck, standing there huge and silent, like it's waiting for you to climb back inside and commit to another day of mechanical trust. And you sigh, because this inspection isn't really about certainty. It's about hope. It's about walking around a machine you don't fully control, pointing at parts and saying, please stay together today. Please don't let me become a cautionary story told over coffee at midnight. And then you climb into the cab. You shut the door. You grip the wheel. And you drive off, trusting a bunch of metal, rubber, and loose bolts to carry you safely into the endless American road, which is either bravery or the most well-paid form of denial anyone has ever invented. Either way, it's showtime. You pull into a diner with a neon sign buzzing like it's about to give up on life. Inside, it smells like fried eggs, cheap cologne, and the collective exhaustion of men who haven't been home in weeks. The waitress pours you coffee so black, it looks like it's made from motor oil. You take a sip and immediately understand why truckers never needed motivational quotes. This coffee is already threatening you into productivity. You settle into a booth with cracked vinyl seats that squeak under your weight, announcing your arrival to a dining room full of men too tired to care. The table is sticky, no matter where you touch it, like a safety mechanism to keep you awake. You try to wipe it with a napkin, but all you succeed in doing is spreading the syrup into new territories. The decor is a time capsule of 1950s optimism, faded by nicotine stains and years of economic disappointment. Behind the counter, a radio plays a song you vaguely recognize, but in your foggy, pre-caffeinated state, it might as well be Morse code. Menus in these places are more suggestion than law. Breakfast is whatever the kitchen feels like serving, usually eggs with some combination of questionable meat. You order something called the Trucker's Special, knowing full well it's just a code for "we cooked a lot of bacon today." The waitress calls you hone, but with the deadpan tone of someone who has seen too many men cry into their biscuits. The coffee sits in front of you, radiating threat. It's thick, strong, and hotter than the surface of Mercury. You blow on it, but it does not cool. It is immune to all natural processes. You look around, watching men in work shirts and battered hats gulp it down like it's holy water. Nobody here sips. They drink like they're trying to put out an internal fire. You add a little cream and it vanishes instantly, like the coffee has vaporized it out of spite. Sugar dissolves, but the bitterness remains, an unmovable feature, like the smell of burnt toast that clings to the air. When you finally commit and take another sip, you feel your stomach tense, your nerves bristle, and your brain jolt like you've licked a car battery. This is the 1960s truckers' breakfast. Not a meal, but a negotiation. Food arrives on a plate big enough to land a helicopter. There are eggs, always overcooked, and bacon that is either limp with grease or so crispy it could double as a tire patch. Potatoes are there too, fried in something that might once have been oil. Sometimes there's toast, always cold, already buttered in a way that suggests the chef lost interest halfway through. Conversation in the diner is soft and spare, the way people talk when they're still waking up or already halfway to falling asleep. A guy at the next table mutters something about traffic on Route 40. Another man quietly curses his dispatcher under his breath, as if afraid the walls are listening. The only person with any real energy is the cook, who clangs pans and shouts orders with the intensity of a man on his third cup of his own product. You eat mechanically, eyes heavy, mind wandering. Your hands shake just enough to remind you that the pills from last night are still doing their work. The food tastes like relief, like calories and salt are all that stand between you and complete collapse. Somewhere across the room, someone laughs, but it's a short, broken sound. Trucker laughter, the kind that knows too much about the road. As you finish, the waitress brings your check with the silent efficiency of someone who has already calculated the tip you'll leave before you even pull out your wallet. You consider lingering, maybe having another cup, but you know better. Too much time spent sitting still, and you'll realize just how tired you really are. You leave a few bills on the table and step outside, blinking into the gray daylight. The world is just as cold, just as indifferent as when you arrived. The truck waits, idling, a reminder that your morning break is over and the road is calling. You pull yourself back into the cab, a little heavier, a little more caffeinated, and a lot less optimistic about the day ahead, but you made it through. Breakfast. The coffee didn't kill you, just reanimated you for another round. You hit the highway with your heart pounding and your stomach full. The aftertaste of burnt coffee clinging to your tongue like a memory you'll never shake. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're already planning where you will stop for lunch, hoping, foolishly, that it will be different. But it never is. That's the secret. Truckers don't chase perfection. They chase the next cup of coffee, the next plate of eggs, and the next stretch of endless road. You unfold a roadmap the size of a dining table and immediately lose the will to live. There's no GPS, no calm voice telling you to turn left in 500 feet. Just you, the highway, and a paper labyrinth that turns navigation into an extreme sport. You try to refold the map and fail, of course, because road maps are designed to be folded once in a factory and never again by human hands. Your fingers leave little grease stains on the highways of Ohio. The paper is already soft at the creases, threatening to tear the next time you try to pretend you understand where you are. These maps are more ancient spellbook than navigational aid, full of cryptic symbols, secret shortcuts, and roads that probably haven't existed since the Eisenhower administration declared war on boredom. You stare at the squiggly blue lines representing rivers and try to remember if you're supposed to cross them, follow them, or just avoid them out of superstition. There's a comfort in the ritual of the map. You spread it out over the steering wheel, across the dash, or across your knees at the diner, tracing your route with a battered thumbnail. Every other trucker in the place is doing the same, and it looks like a support group for the perpetually lost. You squint at tiny town names: Needles, Shamrock, Bucyrus, Truth, or Consequences, places that sound made up until you drive through them at 2 a.m. and wonder why every gas station is called Bob's. If you're lucky, the route is clear. If not, you're in for an adventure. Missing a turn isn't just inconvenient, it's a lifestyle. Take the wrong exit, and you might be headed down a 2-lane country road lined with angry cows, or suddenly find yourself facing a bridge out sign and a field that looks like a set from a horror movie. You might end up at the world's most suspicious rest stop, where the bathrooms are padlocked and the vending machine sells only off-brand mints and regret. There's no such thing as a quick detour in the 1960s. Every wrong turn is an odyssey. You're not rerouted, you're just lost. And the only thing recalculating is your own sense of optimism. You ask a local for directions, and they give you advice like, turn left where the old barn used to be, then go straight till you see where that big dog bit a man last winter. In a way, it's comforting. At least you know they're guessing, too. When you finally think you're back on track, the map won't help you fold it. You try the classic method: fold in half, then in half again, then accordion fold, until you've invented a new geometric shape that cannot exist in 3-dimensional space. You wedge the map between the seat and the door, and it promptly expands to cover your gas pedal at the worst possible moment. And then there are the maps themselves, outdated as soon as they're printed. Roads have changed. Routes have vanished. And sometimes you realize you're on a section that was only ever proposed, which is why it now leads you straight into a cornfield. You try to call the dispatcher, but your only phone is a payphone at a rest stop 50 miles behind you, so you settle for muttering creative curses and hoping the next truck stop has a new map for sale, a newer edition, maybe one that's only a little bit wrong. Driving by map means you develop a sixth sense for direction. You learn to trust the sun, the position of the telephone, polls, the vague advice of locals, and the feeling in your gut that says, maybe I've seen that weird mailbox before. Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. But you always arrive somewhere, eventually, and that's really all anyone can ask from a piece of paper that's trying its best to keep up with the world. So you drive, the map half unfolded in the passenger seat, the roads winding ahead like a choose-your-own-adventure novel where every ending is, you're late. There's something honest about it. No algorithms, no satellites, just you, the highway, and a stubborn commitment to never admitting you're lost, even when you absolutely, obviously are. And if you do end up somewhere you shouldn't be, well, that's just part of the job. Getting lost isn't a mistake, it's a tradition. And in the world of 1960s trucking, tradition is as good a reason as any to keep moving. You light a cigarette like it's a spiritual offering to the gods of asphalt. The smoke fills the cab, blending with diesel fumes until your lungs feel like they're developing their own personality. In the 1960s, cigarettes aren't considered unhealthy. They're considered professional. They're part of the uniform. A man without a cigarette behind his ear is treated with suspicion, like he might be emotionally stable. The first drag in the morning is almost ceremonial. You inhale, and for a second, you feel something close to calm, your nerves settling, your mind sparking awake, your hands finally remembering what it's like to be steady. The tip glows, a tiny sunrise, as if you're lighting up not just tobacco, but the very essence of survival. It's a ritual every trucker knows by heart. Thumb the match, shield it from the wind, cup your hand, and let the smoke fill your lungs. A brief, smoky meditation before a day of chaos. Cigarettes are currency on the road. You can trade them for coffee, a hot meal, or a little extra kindness from the waitress at the next stop. They're also a signal, one that says you belong, that you understand the rules of this rolling brotherhood. You don't need to talk. You just nod, offer a smoke, and share a silence that's less awkward and more like mutual respect among the perpetually exhausted. Your cab is already scented with the ghosts of 100 cigarettes passed. The dashboard has a little pile of butts in the ashtray, each one a tiny mile marker in your ongoing journey toward wherever you're going. The upholstery is branded with small burns, patterns made by dropped ashes during sudden braking or unexpected potholes. You'd never call it dirty. You'd call it lived in, maybe even homey, if homey meant a confined space smelling faintly of regret and menthol. It's not just about stress relief. Cigarettes are your timer, your break, your reason to pause and breathe in a day built around deadlines and moving targets. Lighting up marks the end of a drive segment, the start of rest, or the conclusion of a meal that probably didn't include vegetables. You smoke because you're tired. You smoke because you're bored. Sometimes you smoke because it's the only thing keeping your hands busy and your mind distracted from the enormity of the open road. Back in the 1960s, nobody lectures you about lung health. There are no warning labels, no gruesome pictures on the pack, just slogans promising sophistication and rugged independence. Billboards on the highway advertise your favorite brand with cowboys and race car drivers, as if a little tar and nicotine could make you both a rebel and a hero. You buy them by the carton, stuff the packs into your shirt pocket, your glove box, your overnight bag, just in case the next town is out of stock. Or, worse, only carries menthols. Sometimes you roll the window down and let the breeze carry the smoke away, watching it curl out into the early morning air. Other times, especially in winter, you keep the windows up and the heater blasting until the cab becomes its own weather system, foggy, warm, thick with history. It's not for everyone, but for you, it's the scent of focus, a badge of perseverance, a cloud of your own making to mark the boundary between you and the world outside. When you pass another trucker on the road, you see the flick of a lighter, the spark of a cigarette, and you feel a little less alone. It's a silent hello, a rolling salute to everyone surviving the same hours, same aches, same relentless miles. At the truck stop, you huddle together in small groups by the door, shoulders hunched against the wind, trading stories and jokes between puffs. And of course, there's always that little rush, nicotine sliding into your veins, nerves tingling, the engine of your body revving a little higher. You know it's not good for you, not really, but in a world where every comfort is temporary, a cigarette is dependable. It never runs late. It never gets lost. It never asks you for anything except another 5 minutes of your time. So you finish the first cigarette of the day, stub it out in the overfilled ashtray, and flick the ashes from your lap. Your head clears, your hands steady, your world sharpens. The day is waiting, the road is long, and somewhere along the way, you know you'll light another. Because in the 1960s, the open road isn't just powered by diesel, it's fueled by smoke, ritual, and the stubborn hope that, this time, you'll make it all the way without running out. And then we meet the true star of the show, the speed pills. They're handed out like mints, sometimes prescribed, sometimes borrowed, sometimes sold in truck stops with the same casual attitude as chewing gum. They're called bennies, pep pills, uplift, or whatever makes it sound less like chemical desperation. You pop one like it's a vitamin and tell yourself you're just being efficient, not slowly turning into a human engine in the world. Of the 1960s, trucker, stay awake isn't advice. It's a lifestyle, an unspoken rule, a dare issued by the universe every time your eyelids start to droop. The trucking industry runs on schedules, not sleep. If you're hauling produce, the lettuce needs to cross 3 state lines before it decides to die. If it's car parts, some manager in Detroit is waiting to scream at someone if they're a day late. And if you're moving mysterious, unlabeled crates, well, better not to ask too many questions. Either way, your job is to keep moving. Stopping is for the weak, the lazy, and the unemployed. Enter the pep pill, small, bright, and full of promise. The bottle is rattling in your pocket, a soundtrack to your every movement. Some are little white tablets with the prescription label half rubbed off. Others are neon green capsules you bought for $1 from a guy named Pete at a rest stop in Oklahoma. No matter their source, they all share the same job description. Make you forget you're tired. Remind you that night is a social construct. You don't think about what's in them. You don't want to. The pharmacist says amphetamine sulfate, and you nod like you understand. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to get through another night without accidentally meeting a telephone pole face to face at 70 miles per hour. You shake out a pill into your palm, pop it onto your tongue, chase it with truck stop coffee, and feel a little fire spark in your chest. The world sharpens around the edges. Colors brighten. Your thoughts speed up, darting from one half-finished idea to another, like squirrels on an espresso binge. Suddenly, you're alert, awake. You could write a novel, or at least an angry letter to the Department of Highways about pothole maintenance. Your hands stop shaking from exhaustion and start shaking from excitement. This is what productivity feels like, at least for the first few hours. It's not a secret either. Everyone's doing it. You and your fellow drivers trade tips about brands, dosages, and that one time Jerry tried the blue ones and thought his truck was being followed by a UFO. Even dispatchers know. They don't ask, and you don't tell, but they're always impressed with your can-do spirit and legendary stamina. You joke about being wired or amped up, but behind the laughter is the simple truth. The road is long, and you need every edge you can get. Of course, there's a price. There's always a price. The crash comes later, lurking at the edge of your vision. At first, it's just a little anxiety, a quickened pulse, a dry mouth, a tendency to stare at the radio as if it's going to reveal the meaning of life. Then it's paranoia, the sense that every cop on the highway knows what's rattling in your shirt pocket. Your jaw clenches, your eyes itch, and your thoughts get stuck in loops. You wonder if you should slow down, take a break, stop for an actual meal, but the schedule calls and the pills are easy. By the end of the week, Your body is a mess. You're tired, but can't sleep. Hungry, but can't eat. You promise yourself you'll cut back, maybe after this run, maybe next month. You even try a night without them, just to prove you're not hooked. By midnight, you're chewing the inside of your cheek and bargaining with your own brain. Just one tonight, just enough to make it. You swallow, feel the pill dissolve, and watch the sunrise. The cycle continues. So you keep the bottle close, like a lucky charm, knowing full well you're living on borrowed time and chemical resolve. In the world of 1960s trucking, sleep is for tomorrow, and today is for heroes fueled by benzodrine and hope. If America had a secret fuel, it wasn't just gasoline. It was the quiet click of a pill bottle and the unbreakable will to keep going, no matter how fast your heart beats or how slow the road gets. The highway stretches ahead like an endless, gray tape measure. The world is flat, loud, and repetitive. Telephone poles march by like soldiers. Your engine hums a lullaby meant to seduce your brain into sleeping. This job is not just driving, it's staying awake while everything around you screams, "Take a nap," and unfortunately, your entire paycheck depends on refusing. You settle your hands on the wheel, elbows heavy, shoulders tight, and eyes fixed on a horizon that never seems to get any closer. The road beneath you vibrates gently, the tires thrumming a constant, hypnotic rhythm through your seat and up your spine. You can feel every bump, every expansion joint, every little flaw in the ancient American asphalt. In some strange way, you become part of the truck, metal, rubber, bone, and nerves, an organism built for movement and resistance to sleep. Outside the window, the scenery is less like a moving picture and more like a screensaver stuck on loop. Fields, fence posts, more fields, the occasional billboard trying to convince you that the world's largest ball of twine is worth a 30-mile detour. Sunlight glints off your windshield, sometimes turning the glass into a blinding white void that forces you to squint until your temples ache. Your only real companions are the highway signs, mile markers ticking off progress in slow, satisfying increments. The CB radio chatters on in the background, a low drone of half-finished jokes, weather reports, and warnings about smoky hiding under the next overpass. You catch fragments of other lives, other journeys, but mostly it's just you and the open road. And the monotony is relentless. Hours pass with almost no changes. Sometimes you lose track of whether you've been driving for 2 hours or 10. Did you pass that gas station before? Is that the same dead raccoon, or do they just look alike out here? The lines on the pavement blur together, and your brain, deprived of novelty and desperate for stimulation, starts to wander. You invent games to stay alert. You count the red barns. You make up backstories for the other cars. That station wagon is running away to Florida. The guy in the convertible is living out a midlife crisis. The minivan is a traveling circus of sleep-deprived parents and wild children. Anything to stay mentally present, because the alternative is drifting off. One blink too long, one swerve too late. But nothing is as effective at keeping you on edge as the truck itself. Every rattle, every squeak, every new noise is a potential disaster. You become hyper-aware of the gauges, oil pressure, water temperature, fuel level, speed. You tap the dash, whisper encouragements to the engine, as if your words might convince it to behave just a few more miles. Of course, there's also the adrenaline spike whenever you see flashing lights in the distance. Your mind races through every possible infraction. Am I speeding? Is a taillight out? Is it even legal to be this tired? But mostly, the cops are looking for bigger fish. Or maybe they know that the real punishment is just being here, on this road, in this body. Meal times and bathroom breaks are less about hunger or comfort, and more about breaking up the hypnotic grind. You welcome any excuse to pull over, even if it's just for a few minutes. Stretch your legs, slap some cold water on your face. Remind yourself that you're a human and not just a driving machine. Then, reluctantly, you climb back into the cab and merge back onto the highway, swallowed again by the endless gray ribbon. The day stretches, time loses meaning, and the only thing you know for certain is that you have to keep moving, because stopping means falling behind. Falling behind means explaining yourself to a man in an office who's never missed a night's sleep in his life. So you drive. You endure the boredom, the ache, the gnawing tiredness, and the weird comfort of knowing that you're not alone. Out there are thousands of other drivers, each locked in the same trance, following the same hypnotic tape measure to the next town, the next load, the next stretch of tomorrow. And when your head finally hits the pillow, you'll still hear that engine humming, somewhere deep in your bones, calling you back to the highway again. You pull into a truck stop that looks like a bright oasis in the darkness. Inside, vending machines, stale hot dogs, and a rotating cast of exhausted men who all look like they were carved out of beef jerky. The bathrooms are aggressively grim. The smell is something between disinfectant and defeat. You wash your hands and try not to touch anything, including the concept of hope. Truck stops are their own parallel dimension, places where time is marked not by hours, but by shifts, engine hours, and the rising and falling of the sun through smeared glass. You pass under the buzzing canopy lights, stepping over oil stains old enough to have formed their own ecosystems. Everything here is functional, never quite clean, and somehow eternal. This is where every trucker eventually ends up, either to fuel up, eat, rest, or simply stare at their own reflection in a scratched mirror and remember what a human face is supposed to look like. Inside, the energy is equal parts exhaustion and low-level panic. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, flickering in a rhythm that could drive a less determined person to madness. The floor tiles are beige, gray, and sticky in places best left uninvestigated. Somewhere near the entrance, a rack displays travel pillows, novelty mugs, and world's best dad hats covered in a fine layer of truck dust. Nobody is buying souvenirs here. This is a place for needs, not wants. You drift toward the food section, your body moving on autopilot. The offerings are exactly as you'd expect. Hot dogs spinning endlessly on metal rollers, their skin shiny with an unnatural sheen. A glass case offers pizza slices that look more like archaeology projects than meals. The vending machines hum, with the promise of chips, candy, and soda. Everything your body doesn't need but can consume one-handed at 65 miles an hour. Every now and then, you catch a glimpse of another driver, a hunched figure slumped over a Formica table, boots up, eyes closed, a half-eaten donut still in hand. There's a brotherhood here, spoken in nods and grunts, a mutual understanding of shared suffering and respect for those still upright. The conversations are brief. Weather, road conditions, warnings about cops hiding at mile marker 214. Nobody asks for a life story. Everybody already knows it's roughly the same. The bathrooms are a cautionary tale. The best you can hope for is a working lock and enough toilet paper to form a truce with hygiene. Graffiti covers the stall doors, some creative, some crude, most left as warnings or encouragements to the next desperate soul. The sink has two temperatures, Arctic and lava. The mirror is barely functional, wavy and fogged, turning your reflection into a Picasso painting of fatigue. Back at the counter, a clerk scans your purchases with a practiced indifference. You grab coffee, if you can call it that, a scalding bitter brew poured into a cup so thin it threatens to collapse with every step. If you're lucky, you snag a cinnamon roll that still remembers what it's like to be soft. More often, it's beef jerky and something called energy crackers, which you eat with the kind of optimism reserved for men who have made peace with regret. You use the payphone, check the message board, glance over the newspapers yellowing under the rack. Sometimes you buy a fresh map, knowing it's already out of date. You see posters for lost dogs, band gigs, and help-wanted ads promising flexible hours and competitive wages, which you know translates to, "Please don't ask questions." Eventually, it's time to go. You trudge back to your truck, pockets lighter, arms full of snacks and coffee, skin carrying the faint, chemical tang of the restroom's industrial soap. You climb back into the cab, shutting the door on the chaos behind you. The world outside is quiet again. The truck stop's glow fading in your rearview mirror as you merge back onto the highway. That's the universe of the truck stop. A brief, greasy pause in a life lived on the move. You never really want to stop, but you're always glad you did, if only to remember that, compared to a truck stop bathroom, your cab is actually kind of cozy. You flick on the CB radio and instantly enter a world of trucker slang, nonsense jokes, and men warning each other about speed traps like they're passing down ancient wisdom. This is where friendships happen, not through deep emotional talks, but through someone saying, "Hey buddy, your taillight's out," and you responding like they just saved your life. Because they did. The CB crackles to life, a static-laced soundtrack of voices layered over the hum of your engine. Breaker 19, someone calls, and suddenly you're not alone. The airwaves are full of characters, each one with a handle that's part joke, part code, and part claim to fame. Your Nightcrawler, or Coffee Bean, or maybe just Big Red if you're feeling literal about your truck's color. Nobody uses their real names. It's the only place in America where it's weird to not have an alias. The etiquette is simple but unspoken. You jump in when you've got something to say, and you listen when you don't. Someone might warn about a bear in the air, meaning a police plane scanning the highways, or let you know there's a smoky with a camera up ahead. These warnings are golden, miss one, and you might find yourself explaining to a state trooper why you were going a solid 20 over the limit, and also why you look like you haven't slept since Tuesday. Then there's the humor. CB banter is never highbrow. It's dad jokes with extra miles on them. You hear about the trucker who tried to marry his rig, still waiting for the honeymoon. You laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's there, a lifeline in the monotony, a reminder that you're surrounded by other tired, stubborn souls trying to stay upright until the next exit. Sometimes the talk gets serious, but never too serious. No long confessions, no open wounds. You'll hear about the weather rolling in. Looks like a frog strangler in Amarillo. The best place for pie within 100 miles, and occasionally a slice of home life. Little one lost her first tooth this morning. These are fragments, not stories. Enough to know you're human, but not enough to get bogged down in the details. What really sets the CB apart is the sense of mutual protection. You're part of a loose, rolling alliance. Flat tire? Someone's got a jack. lost in the fog, someone will talk you through the exit numbers. Bad accident up ahead? You hear about it here first, long before any traffic report gets its act together. On the ECB, you're only as alone as you want to be, and sometimes that makes all the difference between white-knuckle anxiety and just another long night on the road. There are rules, of course. Don't hog the channel. Don't pick a fight. You're going to see these people at the next truck stop, and nobody wants to start their eggs with a grudge. If someone asks for a radio check, you answer, even if it's just to say, "You're loud and clear," and if someone shares something real, you respect it. This is a space for surviving, not judging. The language is its own dialect, and if you're new, you'll spend a week thinking 10 to 4 means something complicated. Eventually, it all makes sense. Keep the shiny side up means drive safe. Catch you on the flip-flop means see you on the return trip. These phrases are the handshakes and nods of the asphalt world, little rituals that keep you grounded even as your wheels keep turning. At night, when the world shrinks to the reach of your headlights and the road seems to stretch on forever, the CB is a comfort. It's a voice in the darkness, proof that you're not the last person awake on Earth. Sometimes, when you're miles from anywhere, someone tells a story that makes you laugh so hard you spill your coffee, and for a moment you forget how tired you are. And when someone tells you, "Watch out for the alligator in the road," which, by the way, means a blown tire tread, not an actual reptile, you slow down, eyes peeled, grateful for the warning. Because out here, survival is a team sport. The CB radio isn't just a tool, it's the original social network for the sleepless and the stubborn, a community of the road built on static, slang, and solidarity. At night, the road becomes a tunnel of darkness. Your headlights cut through the void, and everything outside feels unreal. The speed pills keep your brain buzzing, but your body still tries to shut down in protest. You watch the yellow lines flicker past like a strobe light for the exhausted. Your eyes start playing tricks, not hallucinations, yet just the early warning signs that your brain is quietly melting. The world outside the glass ceases to be a landscape and shrinks to a corridor of light and blackness. There are no cities, no towns, just scattered pinpricks of distant porch lights and the occasional glare of oncoming traffic. Each passing vehicle is both a momentary relief and a burst of irritation, blasting you with high beams, reminding you that you're not the only one sentenced to this nocturnal commute. But most of the time, it's just you, your truck, and the eternal road. A narrow, gleaming strip flanked by an abyss that seems to swallow up sound and time. Inside the cab, it's colder than you'd like, but stuffier than you remember. The heater hisses, the fan buzzes, and the radio plays soft, late-night static, or the kind of country song where everyone's dog dies. You're alone with your thoughts, and in the deep hours. Your thoughts are mostly static too, half-formed, looping, trailing off as the hum of the tires rocks you ever closer to the edge of sleep. Your hands grip the wheel a little tighter, knuckles white. Every minute, you force your eyes wide, focusing on the double yellow lines just ahead. Those lines have become your lifeline. Miss them, and you're in a ditch, or worse. But they flicker past in a hypnotic dance, and part of you wonders if the lines are moving, or if your brain is just making them up for your entertainment. You rub your face, slap your cheeks, take another gulp of old coffee, anything to shock yourself back to full awareness. You do what you must to stay alert, crack the window, let in a blast of cold air, sing to yourself, count the mile markers. anything that keeps your mind from drifting. But sometimes you can feel the micro sleeps creeping in. Those dangerous invisible blips where your eyelids close just a second too long and your brain tries to take a secret nap. The road's monotony, the hum of the tires, the white noise of the world at 2 a.m. It's the perfect lullaby for disaster. There's a particular loneliness to night driving. The rest of the world is asleep, warm in their beds, while you're here, chasing the end of the headlights, every mile a battle against your own biology. You pass by little towns that barely register as a sign and a faint glow on the horizon. You catch glimpses of lives you'll never know, farmhouses, diners, distant trains, and wonder what it would be like to stop, to rest, to exist somewhere that isn't moving. Sometimes the darkness starts to play tricks. Shapes appear at the edge of your vision, phantom animals, flickering road signs, the illusion of someone standing by the shoulder who vanishes as soon as you look. You know it's just your brain scrambling for stimulus, desperate to make sense of a world reduced to black and yellow stripes and the endless hum of rubber on road. But for a moment, you have to convince yourself that you're not losing your grip. Even the truck seems to get tired. The engine groans, the dash lights grow dim, and the cab creaks with every bump. You talk to the truck, out loud sometimes, just to remind yourself you're still here, still awake, still in charge. Come on, old girl, just a few more miles. It's half joke, half plea. Eventually, dawn starts to creep in at the corners of the windshield, and the world softens from absolute black to a gentle gray. You made it through another night. The danger recedes, replaced by the familiar fatigue of morning. You're more ghost than man, a creature forged in caffeine, chemical resolve, and sheer stubbornness. Night driving in the 1960s isn't just a job. It's a test, a private marathon through the land of sleep and shadows. Survive the night and you get another day. Fail, and the only thing waiting at the end of the line is a cautionary tale told over truck stop coffee. At some point you blink and the blink lasts too long. It's not sleep, it's betrayal, a micro sleep. A few seconds where your brain checks out like it's going on union break. And when you snap back, you realize you've drifted slightly. Not much. Just enough to feel your heart slam against your ribs like it's trying to escape. Your hands grip the wheel with renewed panic, fingers tight enough to leave little moon-shaped dents in the vinyl. For a split second, every hair on your arm stands at attention, your body's way of warning you that you've just survived something you shouldn't have. Your eyes dart to the mirrors, checking for damage, witnesses, or cosmic retribution. The truck keeps rolling, blissfully unaware that its human operator just took a coffee break in the realm of unconsciousness. It's a shock the first time it happens, a moment where reality warps, and the comforting sameness of the highway turns hostile. You know you're tired, but you don't know. How tired until your body makes the executive decision to override your stubbornness. In the 1960s, no one talks about sleep hygiene. There's no YouTube playlist of soothing sounds or meditation apps on your phone. Your phone is a payphone at a truck stop anyway. There's only you, your fraying willpower, and a world that refuses to let you rest. You blink again, hard, this time on purpose, willing your body to stay in the present. Maybe you slap your own face. Maybe you roll down the window and let a blast of cold, bug-laden air sting your cheeks. Anything to remind your nervous system that it's not off duty yet. You lean forward, posture hunched, desperate for another jolt of alertness. The hum of the engine now feels less like a lullaby and more like a warning siren, reminding you that there's no safety net out here. And the worst part is, you can't tell when it's coming. Microsleeps don't send a warning. There's no slow fade, no gentle descent into dreamland. Just a flicker, a blank spot in your memory, a tiny gap where anything could have happened. You could have veered across a lane. You could have missed an exit. You could have become the cautionary tale told by every trucker from here to Tallahassee. The aftermath leaves you buzzing. Not the good kind of buzz, but the shaky, haunted adrenaline of someone who's seen their own obituary flash before their eyes. You try to shake it off, convincing yourself it was just a fluke, a one-time thing. You turn up the radio, sing along to a song you barely know, drum your fingers on the steering wheel. The night air is thick with exhaust and self-doubt. You glance at the little bottle in your pocket, the pep pills that promised you focus but never guaranteed wisdom. You remember the warnings, spoken in hushed voices, always after the fact, about guys who pushed too hard, ignored the signs, thought they were invincible until they weren't. But you're on a deadline. You're always on a deadline. And sleep, real sleep, is something that happens to other people. As the miles roll by, the fear softens into vigilance. Every set of headlights in your mirror becomes a reminder to stay sharp. Every bump in the road feels personal. You vow to stop at the next truck stop, grab a coffee, maybe even close your eyes for a real nap. But the next exit comes, and you pass it by, telling yourself, just a few more miles. Because out here, quitting isn't an option. It's not pride. It's survival, wrapped in a blanket of exhaustion and necessity. The first microsleep is a lesson you never forget. Afterward, you live in a world of constant checks and balances, a little more wary, a little less cocky. You're awake now, truly awake, even if it's just from fear. The road ahead looks the same, but you know it's changed. You've crossed into new territory where the enemy isn't just boredom or bad coffee, but your own biology, and every mile after that is a negotiation between your willpower, your workload, and the unforgiving laws of sleep. So you tighten your grip, fix your gaze, and keep moving. Because out here, every second counts, and you're still in the game, even if your body sometimes tries to hit pause without asking. You stop again because stopping is how truckers pretend they're not slowly dying. Lunch is pie, maybe meatloaf, maybe mashed potatoes so smooth they feel like they were blended by NASA. Vegetables, technically present, but only in the form of pickle slices that exist purely for decoration. You eat like you're fueling a machine, not a person, because at this point, you kind of are. Inside the diner, the booths are filled with men who look like they've been molded by the road itself. Wrinkled faces, heavy eyelids, and an overall air of having recently survived something minor but traumatic. The menu, stuck inside a cracked plastic sleeve, offers comfort food and little else. Soup of the day, brown. Pie of the day. Yes, the waitress doesn't bother reciting specials. She knows you want whatever's fastest, cheapest, and least likely to cause an existential crisis. You order the daily special, knowing it's never been special a day in its life. Maybe it's a wedge of meatloaf. Maybe it's a slab of fried mystery. But it always comes with mashed potatoes. A beige ocean beneath a single, lonely brown gravy iceberg. Sometimes there's a scoop of coleslaw, pale and watery, barely clinging to its status as a vegetable. Most of the time, though, Your greens arrive pickled, garnishing the edge of your plate like an afterthought. The food arrives fast and hot, the plate heavy enough to double as a weapon if negotiations break down over the last slice of pie. You eat mechanically, shoveling calories with one hand and sipping lukewarm coffee with the other. There's no lingering, no savoring, just a steady, practical consumption. You're not eating for pleasure, you're eating for survival, like a man refueling an engine that's already running on fumes. The pie, though, is a different story. Pie is sacred. Pie is currency. Even if it's just leftover breakfast pie with a wobbly crust and slightly suspicious fruit, it's the only food group on the menu that brings genuine happiness. Truckers talk about good pie the way ancient sailors talked about gold, whispered recommendations, secret tips on which diners have the best apple, the flakiest crust, the creamiest banana. If the waitress asks if you want it warmed up, you nod solemnly. This is not a time for risk. Conversations drift around the room in low tones. Some guys trade routes, some swap stories about bad weather and worse dispatchers. Others just stare out the window, lost in thought, watching cars go by and wondering where everyone else is headed. The television above the counter plays the news, but nobody really listens. You catch the occasional snippet about the world outside, a baseball score, a political scandal, a new car that you'll never afford. You finish your meal, pushing the plate away and hoping your arteries will forgive you. You mop up the last of the gravy with a corner of bread and reach for your pie. Each bite is a small rebellion against the monotony of the road, a sugar-fueled spark of joy in an otherwise gray afternoon. For a moment, you let yourself believe that maybe, just maybe, you could live on pie and coffee forever. The check arrives without fanfare, dropped on the table with the practiced efficiency of someone who knows there are more tired men waiting at the door. You count out cash, leave a tip, and slide out of the booth. Your back twinges as you stand, reminding you that a trucker's body is not designed for comfort, just endurance. You step back into the daylight, squinting as your eyes adjust. The truck is waiting, engine ticking, eager to get back on the highway. You climb in, the seat already warm from the sun, and settle your hands on the wheel. Lunch is done, pie is gone, and the road calls you back to your endless rolling routine. As you pull away from the diner, you pass a sign advertising fresh vegetables, but you know better. Out here, pie is safer than salad, and lunch is just a temporary pause in the slow, unstoppable grind of the American highway. So you drive, full but never satisfied, and hope the next stop has pie worth remembering. After hours behind the wheel, your back is no longer just sore. It becomes a philosophical issue. Your spine is negotiating with your hips. Your knees are threatening to quit, and every bump in the road feels like a personal insult. There's no ergonomic seating. There's just a vibrating metal chair designed by someone who hates the human body. You start the day feeling only mildly crumpled, but as the miles roll by, your discomfort deepens into an existential crisis. Your lower back aches with every mile marker. Your neck feels like it's been wrung out by a carnival strongman. Your knees, jammed against the steering column, deliver regular updates in the form of dull aches and threatening twinges. No position is comfortable. If you slouch, your shoulders burn. If you sit up straight, your tailbone feels like it's trying to tunnel its way out. Trucker seats in the 1960s are more punishment than furniture. Thin foam, cracked vinyl, and the kind of metal springs you might expect to find inside a bear trap. The adjustable backrest is an elaborate joke. You can choose between upright, mild agony and relaxed, a whole new category of pain. Lumbar support is a phrase from a future you'll never live to see. Instead, you stuff an old jacket behind you and hope for the best. With every pothole, your teeth rattle and your spine loses another argument with gravity. Long stretches of highway become a slow-motion chiropractic experiment. The truck vibrates and shakes, and your insides jiggle like jello on a trampoline. Sometimes you wonder if you'll emerge from the cab a couple of inches shorter than when you started the route. The radio offers little comfort. It's a distraction, sure, but it can't drown out the sound of your vertebrae grinding together like rusty gears. You twist and shift, stretching one leg, then the other, hoping for some sweet spot of comfort. But it never comes. You roll your shoulders, you rotate your neck, you even try the trucker's secret weapon, the one-cheek lean, a technique passed down from ancient trucker elders to temporarily fool your nervous system. Rest stops and truck stops offer only brief, bittersweet relief. You unfold yourself from the seat with the grace of a man twice your age, legs numb, hips stiff. It takes several paces before you feel fully vertical. You might touch your toes if you're feeling bold, or at least pretend to stretch, glancing around to make sure no one's watching your awkward semi-yoga routine. You try every remedy: heat packs, cold packs, painkillers, miracle cushions, bought from late-night infomercials. Nothing works. You develop a superhuman tolerance for discomfort. Eventually, you just accept that chronic back pain is as much a part of trucking as diesel fumes and bad coffee. Other drivers offer sympathy, but no solutions. The best advice you get is, try sitting on a rolled-up towel or stop every hour to walk around. These are nice ideas that only work if you're not 10 hours behind schedule and under threat of losing your bonus. So you nod, thank them, and get back in the cab, ready for another round of high-stakes spinal negotiations. Over time, you stop noticing the pain, not because it goes away, but because it becomes a background hum, just another sensation, like hunger or thirst, that gets filed under things you'll deal with later. The real danger is that you start thinking this is normal. You start believing that all backs ache, all legs tingle, all necks are as stiff as a frozen crankshaft. But sometimes when you park at night and stretch out on your paper-thin mattress, you wonder what it would be like to wake up without pain, what it would feel like to stand up straight without grimacing, to sit in a chair that feels like it was built for a human being, not a medieval torture device. Still, you know the truth. Tomorrow, you'll get up, climb back into that vibrating metal seat, and do it all again. Because out here, the road is endless, comfort is a myth, and your spine checked out 3 states ago. But hey, at least the rest of you is still in the game, and sometimes that's all a trucker can ask for. At first, the pills make you feel sharp, alert, unstoppable, like you could drive straight through the sun. But eventually, the magic changes. Your thoughts start racing too fast. Your jaw tightens. Your heart pounds. You feel wired, but not capable. It's like your body is awake, but your soul is stuck buffering. And you realize you're not using the pills anymore. They're using you. The first few hours still feel like the good old days of chemically assisted confidence. You're humming. You're focused. You're driving like a man who's been appointed captain of the highway. The road makes sense. The signs are crisp. Your reflexes feel sharp enough to catch a falling penny. You even start believing you're one of those rare people who can handle it. That's the thing about speed pills. They don't just wake you up. They whisper compliments. They tell you you're built different, that you've cracked the code, that sleep is for soft, fragile people who don't have a shipping deadline and a full tank of diesel. But then the pill turns its head slightly, and the buzz shifts. It starts small, a little flutter in your chest, a tightness behind the ribs, a weird awareness of your own heartbeat, like it's pounding against your shirt buttons, trying to escape the cage. You take another sip of coffee. Of course you do. And suddenly your stomach feels like it's vibrating. Your hands feel light, almost floaty, like they're not entirely attached to your arms anymore. You try to ignore it. You tell yourself it's just the road, the vibration, the caffeine, the wind. But deep down, you know that your body is now running on something that was never meant to be part of a balanced breakfast. Your jaw clenches without permission. You don't even notice at first. You just realize your teeth hurt, like you've been chewing on a tire iron in your sleep. Your tongue presses against your molars. Your cheeks feel sore. And when you catch yourself in the rearview mirror, your face looks wrong. Not sick, not injured, just tense. The kind of tense that makes you look like you're trying to solve a murder case while driving. Your thoughts start racing too. Not helpful thoughts, not productive ones. Just everything. Your brain starts throwing memories at you like a jukebox stuck on shuffle. Snippets of conversations, regrets, things you forgot to do, things you said wrong in 1959, a woman you haven't seen in 2 years, an argument you lost, a truck stop you hated, a weird dream you had last week about your truck turning into a horse. All of it, at once, and you're still driving. You grip the wheel harder, trying to stay anchored in the present. The road is straight, but you feel like your mind is swerving. The speed pills have turned your brain into a room full of buzzing fluorescent lights. Everything bright, everything loud, nothing relaxing. It's a strange paradox. You're wide awake, but you're not fully there. You feel alert, but not capable. Like your eyes are open and your body is moving, but your soul has stepped outside for a smoke break and isn't answering calls. And then comes the paranoia, just a whisper at first. That car behind you is too close. That cop on the shoulder is definitely watching you. That man at the last diner looked like he knew something. You start checking. Mirrors constantly, scanning for threats that aren't real. You feel like the world is full of traps, like everyone is waiting for you to slip up. Your skin prickles. Your shoulders stay raised. Your nerves never fully settle. It's exhausting, but you can't stop, because now you're not just taking pills to drive. You're taking pills because stopping feels worse. If you stop, you'll crash, and not the truck crash, the human crash. Your body will collapse in on itself like a folding chair. Your mood will sink. Your eyes will burn. You'll feel like you're wearing wet wool from the inside. And you'll be so tired you won't even remember what tired felt like before. So instead you take another, just to smooth things out, just to stay normal, just to keep going. And that's when you realize something terrifying. The pills aren't a tool anymore. They're a requirement. They've become part of your schedule, like fuel stops and log books. They're part of your routine, like cigarettes and pie. You don't even feel high. You just feel functional. Like the pills aren't making you superhuman. They're just keeping you from turning into a pile of bones and sadness on the side of the highway. Your body starts sending little warnings. Your heart skips now and then, just enough to make you look down, like you might see it bouncing around on the floorboard. Your hands tremble when you reach for the coffee. Your sweat smells sharper. Your sleep gets worse. Short, jittery, full of half dreams and sudden wake-ups where you sit upright, convinced you forgot something. You're always hungry, but food feels wrong. You're always tired, but sleep feels impossible. And yet, the freight still needs to move. So you drive, with your jaw clenched, with your eyes wide, with your mind racing, and you keep telling yourself you're in control. Because admitting you're not would mean facing the truth. The road isn't the thing keeping you going anymore. It's the pills. And that's the kind of thing that doesn't end with a gentle fade out. It ends with a headline. Or a whisper in a diner. Or a tired trucker shaking his head and saying, deadpan, "Yeah, he pushed it too far. And out here you can't make this up." Late at night you see something on the shoulder. A man, a child, a dog. You slam the brakes in panic. And nothing is there, just darkness, just wind, just your own sleep-deprived brain inventing threats because it's trying to keep you alive. You laugh nervously, then immediately stop laughing, because that's not funny, that's how people die. Night driving is already surreal, but this is new territory. It's well past midnight, the hour when only truckers, insomniacs, and actual ghosts should be out on the road. The dashboard lights cast everything in an eerie glow. The world outside is black, broken only by your headlights and the blinking marker lights along the guardrail. The cab is quiet, except for the thrum of the tires and your own shallow breaths, quickening after that imaginary dog or man or whatever just evaporated in the darkness. You scan the side mirror, half expecting the shape to reappear. It doesn't, of course. There's nothing out there except weeds dancing in the wind and maybe a forgotten mile marker swaying on a rusty post. You try to laugh it off, maybe mutter something like, "Get a grip." But the truth is, it shakes you, because you know exactly where this is coming from. A brain starved for sleep, running on caffeine, chemicals, and nerves stretched tight as piano wire. It happens to everyone eventually. Your mind, desperate to keep you awake, starts conjuring up threats from the shadows. At first, it's just movement out of the corner of your eye, a flicker, a shape, a patch of mist that looks too solid. Then, as the hours grind on, the images get clearer, more convincing. A face staring from the trees, a hunched figure shuffling along the shoulder. Sometimes a dog, sometimes a deer, sometimes something your brain can't quite name and doesn't want to. Every time your heart lurches, adrenaline spikes, and you're wide awake for a minute or two, at least. That's the dark gift of the road phantom. It's your own body trying to jolt you back into the land of the living, like a built-in emergency alarm that just happens to be terrifying. You wonder if this is what your ancestors felt staring into campfires, seeing monsters in the flickering shadows. The modern version just involves more chrome and fewer wolves. After a while, you develop rituals to ward them off. You keep the radio low, but not too low. Just enough background noise to remind you that you're not alone. You fiddle with the air vents, letting cold air blast you in the face, as if it could chase away the hallucinations. Some drivers swear by snacks, endless chewing on jerky or sunflower seeds, anything to keep the senses grounded. Others sing, recite routes, or talk to themselves just to fill the cab with something other than silence. Sometimes you try logic. You remind yourself that these phantoms aren't real, that you checked the mirrors, that there's no way a child would be standing on the shoulder at 3 a.m. in the middle of Nebraska. But deep down, you know logic is useless against a tired brain. The only cure is rest, and you're 100 miles from the next safe pull-off. For the rest of the drive, your nerves are on a hair trigger. Every shadow is suspect, every curve of the road a potential stage for another apparition. You grip the wheel tighter, teeth clenched, jaw sore. The adrenaline slowly fades, replaced by a deeper exhaustion, a bone-deep tiredness that no amount of pep pills can really fix. As dawn starts to break, the phantoms disappear, melting into the morning mist. The road is empty, just as it always was. But you remember each encounter, a catalog of things that never were, seen only by the sleep-deprived and the truly unlucky. You tell yourself you'll get more rest next time, that you'll stop before the shadows come to life. But you also know the truth. Out here, everyone sees ghosts eventually, and the road, indifferent and endless, just keeps rolling on. You're hauling freight, and that freight has a schedule. The company wants it there yesterday. There are no mental health days. There's no, hey, I'm too tired to safely operate an 18-wheeled missile. There's just pressure, 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 the kind that makes you swallow another pill and tell yourself it's normal. In the 1960s, exhaustion isn't a problem. It's a business model. Every delivery comes with a number attached, a time, a date, a mileage, and a veiled threat. Dispatchers hand out schedules the way doctors hand out bad news. Brisk, efficient, and absolutely non-negotiable. The client wants their freight in Cleveland by dawn, even if you started in Amarillo, and the only thing more relentless than the clock is your rising anxiety. There's no sympathy from the other end of the radio. If you call in and say you're tired, your dispatcher says, everyone's tired. If you call in and say the weather's bad, they ask, can you chain up and keep rolling? The entire system is built on the unspoken promise that truckers are both unbreakable and replaceable. You start to realize you're just another part in the machine, a moving piece that had better not slow down or squeak. You measure your existence in hours, not days. 10 hours to deliver, 4 hours to the next pickup, maybe 30 minutes to sleep. Time off? That's what weekends are for, if you're lucky enough to see one. But most of the time, weekends just mean the roads are emptier and you can drive faster, because your boss expects you to use every advantage. Paperwork is just as relentless. You log your hours, track your stops, calculate your average speed. You learn to fudge numbers just enough to look plausible, but not enough to trigger suspicion. Everyone does it, and everyone pretends they don't. The logbook becomes a creative writing exercise, your penmanship growing shakier as the hours add up, and the sleep deficit grows. How do you cope? Pills, of course. Coffee, obviously. Loud music, colder air, day-old jerky. You do math in your head. If you skip dinner, you gain 20 minutes. If you don't stop for a shower, you save another 15. It's a constant trade-off, bartering comfort and safety for another half hour of progress. You tell yourself you'll rest at the next stop, the next exit, after this run. But the next run always arrives before you're ready, and suddenly you're stacking exhaustion on top of exhaustion like pancakes in a diner. You start to see your boss as a distant, all-powerful entity, a voice on the radio, a name on the pay stub. You've never met the man, but you know his priorities. The load gets there, the customer's happy, and you're on the road for the next assignment. If you're late, you get docked. If you're early, you get a good job and a slightly harder run next time. There's no bonus for caution, no reward for self-preservation. Sometimes you hear about someone who couldn't take it anymore, A guy who parked his rig and just walked away. Or worse, someone who closed their eyes for just a second and never opened them again. These stories spread through the truck stop like urban legends, reminders that the pressure is real and the cost is permanent. But even then, you feel like you can't stop, can't slow down, can't say no. Because there's always another deadline, another load, another boss waiting to remind you that out here, being human is the least important part of the job. In the end, the schedule always wins. You become a master of pushing yourself further, of tuning out the pain and the warnings and the common sense. Because in the 1960s, being a trucker isn't just about driving. It's about pretending you're a machine until you finally break. The freight gets delivered, the deadline is met, and your own limits are left somewhere behind, waiting for you to catch up if you ever get the chance. After enough nights, you stop thinking of the truck as a vehicle. It becomes your apartment, your workplace, your coffin in progress. You keep your clothes in a bag, your food in wrappers, your dreams in the glove compartment. The cab is cramped but familiar. It's where you eat, where you smoke, where you stare into the dark and question your life choices like a man doing therapy with a steering wheel. At first you told yourself the truck was just a tool, a means to an end, a way to earn a living, not a lifestyle. But the longer you drive, the more you settle in. The cab morphs from a workspace into a personal microcosm. Every corner, every crevice, customized and broken in. There's the pile of spare shirts tucked behind the seat, the crumpled receipts and logbooks in the footwell, the blanket that smells permanently of diesel and dry air. Your bed is a slab of foam, a little thinner every week, jammed against the back wall. You get used to sleeping with your knees bent and your boots still on, a habit born from necessity and, let's be honest, a healthy suspicion of whatever lurks beneath a 1960s truck stop parking lot. The hum of the engine becomes your white noise machine, and the metallic rattle of the cab is your lullaby. Meals are eaten in the driver's seat, balanced on your knees or wedged between the dash and the wheel. Cold sandwiches, beef jerky, bags of chips, pie pilfered from the last diner. There's a thermos that never quite comes clean, and a collection of spoons, forks, and the occasional pocket knife. The floor is an ever-changing landscape of empty wrappers, crumpled napkins, and, if you're unlucky, one sticky coffee spill that never dries out. Privacy is theoretical. Your world is a few feet wide, and everything you own is always within arm's reach. You learn to change your shirt in the shadowy glow of a parking lot light, to brush your teeth with bottled water, to shave using the driver's mirror while muttering threats at your reflection. Laundry piles up until even your socks start protesting. Over time, you decorate in a trucker's way. Maybe a lucky rabbit's foot dangles from the dash. Maybe there's a faded photo of a family or a sweetheart wedged above the visor. You pin up postcards from places you passed through too quickly to actually visit. The CB radio gets a place of honor. The cigarette lighter is always in reach. And somewhere in the glove box is a growing graveyard of tiny motel soaps and half-used matchbooks. Everything has its place, even if that place is under the seat, somewhere. And the truck, for all its noise and grime, starts to feel like a second skin. You know every rattle, every sticky latch, every quirk in the heater or air vent. The outside world becomes distant, a series of fleeting images through a rectangle of glass, a blur of gas stations and city lights that mean less and less the longer you roll. But for all its comfort, the truck is never a place of rest. The engine never quite shuts up. The mattress never quite forgives you. And the cab is always just a little too cold or a little too stuffy. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and full of half-remembered dreams. You wake up more tired than you were when you laid down, staring at the roofliner, wondering if today is the day your back finally fuses with the seat. In the quiet, when you're parked at the far edge of a lot, staring at the stars through a bug-smeared window, you start to question things. Did you mean to end up here? Did you ever think you'd find peace in a space so small, so loud, so lonely? The truck is both prison and sanctuary, your mobile fortress and the world's worst hotel room. Yet, when morning comes and the sky brightens, you crawl out. From the sleeping shelf, brush the crumbs off your lap, and fire up the engine. Because for better or worse, this moving box of metal and memories is home. And if it hates sleep, well, so do you. Out here, you're both rolling on borrowed time, just hoping you'll make it to the next stop with your sanity and your sense of humor intact. You grab food that technically counts as a meal, beef jerky, crackers, maybe a sandwich that has been wrapped since the Cuban Missile Crisis. There's no nutrition label, there's no ingredient list. There's only salt, preservatives, and the vague sense that this was made in a factory that also produces bolts. You chew and tell yourself it's fine, because it's either this or eat nothing and hallucinate another phantom dog. Forget farm to table. The real 1960s trucker experience is gas station to gullet. You step into the fluorescent-lit store, blinking at rows of products that seem to exist in defiance of all known food science. There's a special shelf for beef sticks that taste like spicy rubber bands, and another for crackers sharp enough to cut your gums. Sandwiches come encased in plastic that crackles like old cellophane, their mysterious fillings a tribute to the lost art of vague food naming. Ham salad, chicken loaf, or the ever-popular American cheese product. You don't ask what's in them. You just hope they're not moving. You survey your options, which range from dehydrated to never really hydrated in the first place. A tin of potted meat, a can of Vienna sausages, maybe a single hard-boiled egg rolling around in a suspiciously sweaty bag. Some snacks claim to be energy bars, but that mostly means packed with enough sugar to keep you awake through a minor dental emergency. You make your choices with the casual fatalism of someone who's stopped pretending to care. You're not here for gourmet. You're here for calories, convenience, and the faint hope that whatever you eat won't come back to haunt you in the next 100 miles. You grab a bottle of cola that tastes like it's been stored near a leaky battery, and maybe a candy bar just to feel like you're living dangerously. At the register, the clerk rings up your order without comment. He's seen men buy weirder things at weirder hours. You hand over a few bills, stuff your haul into a paper bag, and retreat to your truck before you can change your mind. The cab becomes your dining room. You spread the goods out across the dashboard, peeling open the wrappers with the delicate touch of a bomb diffuser. The beef jerky is tough enough to qualify as a workout. Every bite is a battle of wills between your molars and whatever animal this used to be. The crackers crumble instantly, leaving a dusting of crumbs across your shirt and seat. The sandwich, well, you eat it quickly, before your brain has time to register what your mouth is telling it. There's no time for a tablecloth, no cutlery, no napkins beyond what you scrounge from the last diner. You sip your cola, chase it with a fistful of peanuts, and call it lunch, dinner, or whatever meal it's pretending to be. Out here, food is just fuel, a temporary distraction from the drone of the highway and the ache in your back. Food safety is a dice roll. If the sandwich tastes a little off, you shrug and eat around the edges. You tell yourself you have a trucker's stomach, a digestive system honed by years of questionable decisions. Occasionally, something fights back. A stomach ache, a headache, the vague sense that your organs are negotiating a union contract. But the road waits for no one, and you keep moving, one bite at a time. Every trucker has a story about the worst thing they ever ate on the road. Green pickles that fizzed, eggs that bounced, or jerky that fought back. These stories are badges of honor, traded at truck stops like secret handshakes. You learn to laugh about it because if you didn't, you'd probably cry. Or worse, try to eat healthy and end up spending the rest of the trip dreaming of pie. In the end, you finish your gas station meal, wipe your hands on your jeans, and toss the wrappers into the growing mountain of trash behind the seat. You tell yourself it wasn't so bad. You didn't hallucinate another phantom dog. And hey, if you're still upright at the next stop, maybe you'll celebrate with a fresh pack of jerky, if such a thing exists. On the road, you take your victories where you can get them. Sometimes that victory is simply making it another 100 miles without food poisoning, regret, or another ghost dog sighting, and you can't make this up. You start recognizing the same guys at the same diners, same tired eyes, same coffee cups, same jokes. These aren't friendships formed through vulnerability. They're formed through mutual survival. A nod, a cigarette, a warning about a speed trap. That's love, 1960s style. Nobody says I care about you, but everyone says, don't fall asleep out there. Over time, the truck stop becomes less like a way station and more like a revolving reunion. There's always that guy in the flannel shirt who sits at the corner booth, nursing the same cup of black coffee for hours. The man with the battered thermos and the slow, knowing smile who always has a joke about dispatchers. The woman who drives a milk truck and can outcuss the lot of you. You don't need to ask their names. You know them by their rigs, their radio handles, the way they order pie. There's comfort in seeing familiar faces. In a life spent in motion, routine is rare, and the people who share your schedule become your unofficial community. You don't exchange phone numbers or birthdays. You just keep running into each other at 2 a.m., bleary-eyed and bonded by exhaustion. Maybe you don't talk much, but when you do, it's shorthand and sarcasm, a language only road-weary souls understand. Truckers don't hug, and they sure don't talk about feelings, but they watch out for each other in ways that matter. Someone saves you a spot at the counter. Someone else leaves a note in the bathroom warning about a bad batch of coffee. You hear a voice on the CB. Watch out for black ice near mile 210, and you realize it's the same guy who once helped you patch a tire in the rain 3 states back. Sometimes you swap tips, where to get the best pie, which motels don't charge by the hour, how to trick your back into not mutinying. If someone's rig won't start, you don't ask questions. You just hand over your jumper cables and make a dumb joke about giving her the juice. Maybe it's not deep, but it's real. And on the road, real counts for more than poetry. Friendship here is built on the mutual understanding that you're all enduring the same long hours, the same relentless deadlines, the same bone-deep fatigue. There's no competition, only commiseration. You grumble about dispatchers, laugh at your collective back pain, and make fun of anyone who tries to order a salad. You know each other's coffee orders, and sometimes that's more intimate than knowing someone's secrets. Sometimes, when the miles get heavy and your mind starts to drift, You catch another trucker's headlights in your rearview mirror. You might slow down a little just to make sure they're okay. If you hear a "thanks, buddy" over the CB, you nod, knowing they can't see you, but that somehow the gesture travels. There's an unwritten code. If someone's pulled over with a flat, you pull in too. Even if you can't help, you keep them company, swap stories, share a smoke. You both know what it feels like to be stuck, and how easy it is for the world to just drive on by. No one wants to be forgotten by the side of the highway, and if you don't see someone for a while, if a regular stops showing up, you notice. You ask around. Anyone seen Big Red lately? If the answer is no, you hope he just found a better route, or finally took that vacation he was always joking about. So you keep driving, knowing that somewhere out there, another trucker is sipping burnt coffee and cursing at the weather. You're not friends in the way people at home mean, but you're part of the same tribe. You trade warnings, share snacks, offer nods, and, most importantly, you tell each other to stay awake. Because out here, that's as close to "I love you" as anyone ever needs. And that's the weird magic of the road. Nobody asks for much, but everyone understands everything you're going through, without ever saying a word. At night, over coffee, someone tells a story about a guy who nodded off and never woke up. And everyone listens quietly, because these stories aren't entertainment. They're prophecy. They're reminders that this life has a body count. Nobody says rest. Nobody says quit. They just stare into their cups like they're looking for an answer in burnt coffee sludge. It usually happens the same way. You're sitting in a booth at some late-night diner, the kind where the neon sign buzzes like it's trying to summon a demon, and the waitress has poured the coffee so many times her wrist moves on autopilot. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of grease clinging to everything. Everyone looks tired in the same way, eyes glassy, shoulders hunched, faces lined with the quiet strain of being awake when your body is begging to shut down. And then someone starts talking, not loudly, not dramatically, just casually, like they're describing the weather. Yeah, you hear about Walt? The name changes depending on where you are. Sometimes it's Walt, sometimes it's Eddie, sometimes it's a guy everyone called Red, even though he had black hair. But it's always the same story, and everyone at the table leans in slightly, not because they're nosy, but because they're listening for the shape of their own future. They tell you how it happened. He was hauling something ordinary, canned goods, lumber, car parts, something innocent. He'd been on the road too long. Maybe the dispatcher pushed him. Maybe he pushed himself. Maybe he took a few bennies to stay sharp and a few too many coffees to stay human. Maybe he told himself he was fine because that's what men do in this job. They say they're fine right up until the moment they're not. He hit a long, straight stretch of road, no traffic, no excitement, just darkness and lines and the hum of the engine turning into a lullaby. And then he blinked. Or maybe he didn't even blink. Maybe he just faded. A micro sleep, a few seconds. That's all it takes. They say he drifted over the center line. They say he clipped the shoulder and overcorrected. They say the truck jackknifed like it was folding itself into the earth. They say it happened so fast there wasn't time for fear, just impact. Nobody adds poetic details. Because these stories don't need embellishment. Reality is already brutal enough. You can feel the silence at the table grow heavier with every sentence. The man telling the story stares down into his coffee while he talks, like he's trying to read the future in the ripples. The others barely move. One guy taps ash off his cigarette. Another rubs his face. Another just keeps staring straight ahead, eyes unfocused, like he's replaying his own close calls on a loop. Because every trucker has had moments. Every trucker has felt that sudden head dip, that drifting wheel, that moment where the road swerved, and then your heart punched you awake so hard you thought it might crack a rib. Everyone knows the edge, and hearing about someone who slipped off it doesn't feel like tragedy. It feels like confirmation, like the road is keeping score, and that score isn't in your favor. Sometimes the story gets worse. They say he hit a family car. They say he didn't hurt anyone but himself. They say he lived long enough to talk. They say he died instantly, which is told like a mercy. And then someone mutters something like, "Could have been any of us." And nobody argues, because it could have. Then the conversation shifts, because it has to. Nobody sits in the darkness too long. Someone makes a joke, something small, half-hearted, like, "Well, guess I'm not skipping my nap today." Everyone chuckles softly, because humor is how you breathe when the truth is too heavy. But deep down, the story sticks. It stays in your chest like a stone. Because you know tomorrow night or next week or next month, you'll be back on that highway. You'll be tired again. You'll have that bottle in your pocket again. You'll be telling yourself you're fine again. And you'll remember Walt, or Eddie, or Red. And you'll grip the wheel just a little tighter. You'll roll the window down just a little more. You'll slap your cheeks, chew your jerky, drink your coffee, and do every ridiculous little trick you can to stay awake. Because these crash stories aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to warn you. But the irony is you don't have the luxury of changing your life. So you just listen. You sip burnt coffee like it's medicine. You stare into the cup like it might offer a solution. And then you stand up, leave a few bills on the table, and walk back out into the night to climb into the same rolling machine that took those men. And you drive anyway, because that's trucking. And you can't make this up. After too many pills, your brain starts inventing enemies. That car behind you, suspicious. That cop in the distance, probably watching you personally. That man at the counter, too quiet. You start seeing patterns in everything, like the universe is testing you. And technically, it is, but not in the cool, spiritual way. In the your nervous system is screaming way. It starts innocently enough. You're rolling down a dark stretch of highway, the cab vibrating like an old refrigerator, and you notice a pair of headlights in your mirror. Not unusual. This is America. People drive. But tonight, something about them feels wrong. They've been there too long. They're keeping the same distance. They're not passing. They're just sitting behind you like they're waiting for something. Your brain immediately offers a theory. They're watching you. Now, logically, this makes no sense. Why would anyone follow a 40-ton truck hauling freight through Kansas at 1:30 a.m.? That's not a thrilling hobby. That's not even a crime show subplot. But logic has left the building. Logic got off at the last exit to go drink a warm soda and cry in the bathroom. Because the pills are doing what pills do. They've turned your nervous system into a live wire. You check your mirrors again. Headlights, still there. You adjust your speed slightly. They adjust too. And that's it. That's all your brain needs. Confirmation. Now you're convinced you're being tailed by either a cop, a DKH, federal agent, a jealous ex, a man who wants your freight, or 5, the concept of consequences itself. Your heart rate picks up. Your palms sweat. You start swallowing more often because your mouth is dry like old cardboard. You think about your logbook. Is it accurate? Did you fudge a number? Did you stop too long at that diner? Did you go a little too fast downhill to make up time? Is your taillight out? Is your trailer hitch making that suspicious noise? Are you technically breaking the law by being this awake? Your brain is now sprinting, and you're still driving. You pass an overpass, and you're sure you see a silhouette above it. A cop car, maybe, or just a shadow. But your brain doesn't believe in just shadows anymore. Not after the road phantoms. Not after the crash stories. Not after 3 days of sleep that barely counts as sleep, and pills that make you feel like your veins are full of bees. You tighten your grip on the wheel. You stare ahead. You try to act normal. Which is funny, because nothing about this is normal. Then you pull into a truck stop for fuel, and the paranoia follows you inside like an invisible hitchhiker. The cashier looks at you for half a second too long, suspicious. The man by the coffee urn keeps glancing your way, suspicious. A teenager mopping the floor pauses when you walk by, suspicious. You're convinced everyone in the building is part of some secret coordinated effort to observe you, document you, and eventually, I don't know, arrest you for the crime of being exhausted. Even the vending machine feels judgmental. You stand at the counter, buying coffee with shaky hands, trying to keep your voice steady when you say, "Just this." And the clerk says, casually, "Long night." And your brain translates that into, "I know what you've done." You nod stiffly, trying not to panic. You feel your jaw clenching again, tight enough to crush coal. Your muscles ache, but not from fatigue, from tension. Your whole body is braced like you're expecting someone to tackle you in the snack aisle. You head back to the truck, scanning the lot. You see a guy leaning against his rig, smoking. He looks at you. You immediately assume he's an undercover cop, which is hilarious because he looks like he's been awake since 1957, and his jacket smells like frying oil. You climb into the cab and lock the door, not because you're in danger, but because your brain wants the illusion of safety. You start the engine, pull out, and merge back onto the highway like you're escaping a scene. And now you're hyper alert again, not because of the road, because of the threat your brain invented. The headlights behind you reappear, still there, still steady. You think, there it is. I knew it. This is it. You start imagining your future. You imagine being pulled over. You imagine the flashlight shining in your face. You imagine the officer asking what you've taken, and you pretending you don't know what he means, because honesty is for well-rested people. But then the headlights pass. A normal car, a normal driver, probably a dad who just wants to get home. He zooms by, completely unaware that he just starred in your internal thriller movie. And suddenly you feel ridiculous. You laugh. Once. A short burst. Then you stop. Because you don't feel better. You feel worse. Because the paranoia doesn't go away just because you were wrong this time. It's still in you. A buzzing layer under your thoughts. A constant tension in your shoulders. A voice whispering, "Watch, watch, watch." And you realize something strange and depressing. The pills are no longer making you a better driver. They're making you a hunted animal. You're awake, but you're not at peace. And that's the real cost. Not the speed, not the schedule, not the aching back. It's the fact that after enough nights like this, you stop trusting the road and you start distrusting the entire world. And out here in the dark, with your heart hammering and your eyes wide, you can't make this up. Eventually, the pill wears off. And when it does, it's not gentle. It's like someone pulls the plug on your entire personality. Suddenly you're exhausted, jittery, moody, and starving. Your body feels hollow. Your brain feels bruised. You'd sleep if you could, but now you're too wired to rest and too tired to function. The worst of both worlds, like being trapped inside a bad battery. It starts with a quiet shift. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a feeling. Like the air inside your cab suddenly got heavier. Like the headlights dimmed a little, even though they didn't. Like the engine got louder, even though it's been humming the same song for hours. You blink and your eyes sting. Your shoulders slump, and you realize you've been holding your body tight like a scared animal. The buzz that kept you upright is leaving, and you can feel it in your blood, like warmth draining from a bathtub. At first, you try to deny it. You straighten up, adjust your grip on the wheel, sip coffee like it's medicine. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself the tiredness is just in your head. You tell yourself you've been through worse. But then your hands start shaking. Not the little too much coffee tremble, the deeper, emptier tremor. The kind that comes from your nervous system, realizing it's been sprinting for hours and now it's out of fuel. Your stomach growls, but it's not normal hunger. It's a hollow, gnawing desperation, like your body is trying to eat itself out of spite. Your mouth goes dry, your throat feels tight, and suddenly everything irritates you. The radio is too loud, the road is too long. That car in front of you is driving too slow. The sky is too dark. Your shirt is too itchy. Your entire life feels slightly offensive. And you realize you're not just tired, you're coming down. That's the part they don't advertise when they hand you. The little bottle with the cheerful label. Nobody says, hey, by the way, when this wears off, you'll feel like a wet rag stuffed inside a haunted washing machine. They just say, keeps you awake, which is true. But it also keeps you awake in the way a house fire keeps you warm. The tiredness hits you like a brick. Heavy, sudden, unfair. It's not the cozy tiredness of someone who had a long day and is looking forward to bed. It's the soul-level exhaustion of someone who has pushed past normal human limits and now feels like gravity doubled overnight. And the cruelest part? You still can't sleep. Because your body is exhausted, but your brain is wired. Your thoughts scatter and jitter like a scared flock of birds. Your heart is still beating too fast. Your legs feel restless, like they want to run, even though they can barely exist. You feel like you've been plugged into an outlet and then yanked out violently, leaving sparks behind your eyes. It's the worst middle state. Not awake. Not asleep. Just broken. Your focus dissolves. The road starts to blur again. Your eyelids droop, but the moment you feel yourself slipping, your body jerks you back with panic. You yawn so hard your eyes water. Your jaw aches from clenching. Your head feels too heavy for your neck. You start making deals with yourself. Just make it to the next truck stop. Just make it to the next exit. Just make it to the next town with lights. You try to distract yourself with chewing gum, jerky, sunflower seeds. Eat anything to keep your body doing something. You slap your own face like you're trying to wake up a horse. You roll down the window and let cold air hit you in the eyes, because apparently this is your coping strategy now, weather-based self-harm. And somewhere deep in the back of your mind, you know what's coming next. The temptation. Because you know exactly what would fix this feeling. Another pill. Just one. Just enough to smooth it out. Just enough to take the edge off. Just enough to get back to functional. And that's what makes it so deadly. The come down isn't just miserable, it's persuasive. It makes you desperate enough to repeat the cycle, because the pill doesn't just give you energy, it rescues you from the punishment it caused in the first place. You pull into a truck stop, finally, headlights sweeping across the lot like tired eyes. You park the rig, hands trembling, shoulders slumped. You climb out like your bones are made of wet wood. Inside, the fluorescent lights stab your skull. The smell of coffee and frying grease turns your stomach. You stand there staring at the snack shelf like a man who has never seen food before. And you realize you're starving. But nothing sounds good. You buy something anyway, crackers, jerky, maybe a stale sandwich, and you chew without tasting. It's not nourishment. It's just an attempt to convince your body you're still alive. Then you sit in the cab again, and the silence hits. Your heart is still racing, but your spirit feels like it fell through the floor. You'd sleep if you could, but you can't. So you just sit there, hollow and jittery, watching your own hands shake in the dim dash light. And you think with the quiet dread of a man who knows too much. This is what it costs. This is the price. And tomorrow you'll probably pay it again. Because out here, the road doesn't care if you're tired. The company doesn't care if you're human. And the pill just waits in your pocket like a tiny, cheerful devil. You can't make this up. Something happens, a swerve, a close call, a near miss. It scares you so badly your hands shake on the wheel. For a moment, you're completely awake, completely sober, completely aware of how fragile you are. And you tell yourself, that was it. That's the warning. I'm done. Then you stop, buy more coffee, and keep going, because the truck doesn't stop just because you had a revelation. Most of the time, you're moving through the hours on autopilot, so used to the hum of the engine and the monotony of the road that your mind drifts and wanders. But all it takes is one split second to bring everything roaring back into focus. Maybe it's a deer in the headlights, frozen and ghostly before it leaps away. Maybe it's a car that merges without looking, forcing you to yank the wheel so hard your coffee ends up on the ceiling. Maybe it's your own eyelids dropping for a fraction too long before you snap awake to the sound of rumble strips screaming beneath your tires. Whatever it is, it grabs you by the throat. Suddenly, you're hyper-aware of everything. The size of your truck, the weight of your load, the thin line between routine and catastrophe. Your body surges with adrenaline, heart pounding so loudly you can hear it over the engine. You're sweating, even if it's cold. You grip the wheel so tight your knuckles ache, willing the world to slow down long enough for you to catch your breath. Oh, there's always that moment of bargaining. You say to yourself, that's it. That's the sign. I'm stopping after this. You replay what just happened over and over in your mind. Was it your fault? Could you have reacted faster? Should you have seen it coming? For a few miles, you drive with perfect form, 10 and 2, eyes darting between mirrors, scanning the road like a hawk. You promise to take better care of yourself. You promise to rest. You promise, with the fierce, trembling sincerity of a man who just looked into the abyss, that this will never happen again. For a little while, you actually believe it. But the road is relentless. The schedule is relentless. And so, you do what every trucker before you has done. You rationalize. I'll just get to the next stop. I'll take a longer break. I'll make it up to myself later. Maybe you stop for a cup of coffee or splash cold water on your face at a grimy truck stop sink. You stand outside, breathing diesel, and secondhand smoke, and tell yourself you're steady again. It's not the first time, and if you're honest, it won't be the last. You've heard all the stories: drivers who weren't so lucky, rigs overturned on the shoulder, a twisted guardrail that never got replaced. Every veteran trucker has at least one story about the day the universe gave them a warning and what they did with it. Some actually did quit. Most didn't. Most just drove on, heart still thumping, hands a little shakier than before. These moments stick with you, buried under layers of routine. You might laugh about it later, swap near-miss stories at a diner over burnt coffee and pie, but you never really forget the feeling. The cold, clear awareness that you are, in the end, just a tired mammal in charge of thousands of pounds of steel moving at highway speed. The hard truth is that fear alone isn't enough to make you stop. The freight doesn't move itself, and your boss's sympathy ends the second. You're late. The bills pile up, and rest isn't on the schedule. You keep going because that's the job. Because stopping means explaining yourself to people who don't understand the road or the thin margin for error that's always waiting to claim the unwary. You keep driving, a little more cautious, a little more humble, knowing you got lucky. You tell yourself you'll remember this feeling. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But deep down, you know the road is patient. It's always ready to remind you again, whenever it thinks you're getting too comfortable. So you wipe your hands on your jeans, top off your coffee, climb back into the cab, and start the engine. The world keeps moving. The truck keeps rolling. And you, lucky again, drive on, shaken but still rolling, grateful in a way only the almost broken can be. Out here, a near miss isn't just a warning. It's part of the job description. And you can't make this up. Your heart doesn't feel right. Your hands tremble sometimes, even when you're not driving. Your sleep is broken into miserable scraps. Your stomach burns from coffee and diner grease. Your teeth feel like they're dissolving. But you ignore it, because ignoring pain is the unofficial trucker religion. In the 1960s, men don't go to doctors for exhaustion. They go to diners and buy another pill. At first, you chalk it up to the usual wear and tear. Trucking's a hard job. Everyone aches. Everyone's tired. Your back throbs. Your eyes itch. Your knees creak when you climb in and out of the cab. That's just the deal. But then the symptoms start stacking up. Your heartbeat skips, racing when you're sitting still, then slowing until you're sure it's forgotten how. You get dizzy when you stand, sweat when you sit, and sometimes your hand shakes so bad you spill coffee before it ever reaches your mouth. You tell yourself it's nothing, just nerves, just the job, just another rough week on the road. It doesn't help that you're living on a culinary diet designed to defeat even the strongest of stomachs. Coffee is your lifeblood, but it eats away at your insides like battery acid. Every meal is fried, salted, reheated, and served with a side of heartburn. Grease coats your tongue, and diner gravy is basically a prescription for indigestion. Vegetables are rare. Vitamins are a rumor, and water is something you use to brush your teeth, assuming your teeth are still hanging on. Speaking of teeth, they don't fare well in the world of 1960s trucking. All that sugar from snack cakes and sodas, the constant acid from cheap coffee, and the cigarettes that fill your mouth with smoke, all combine to wear your smile down to a shadow. You brush in the truck stop bathroom when you remember, but the sink is always cold and the mirror always fogged. The headaches come and go. Sometimes it feels like your skull is in a vice. Your vision blurs, especially after too many hours or too few hours, which, let's be honest, is always. When you finally do get a few minutes to rest, sleep is a shallow, uneasy thing, broken up by dreams where the road just keeps going and your body never really stops moving. You wake up exhausted, stiff, hungry, and immediately searching for another hit of caffeine or a little white pill to drag your consciousness back into gear. You notice how some guys look gaunt, skin pale and thin, hands trembling over their silverware. You see guys clutching their chests, hunching over in pain, limping to the counter. Nobody talks about it. Nobody asks. You just slap each other on the back and make another joke about truck stop roulette, as if humor can keep your arteries clear and your liver functioning. Out here, pain is just another passenger. You don't mention it. You don't seek help. You self-medicate with over-the-counter pills, cups of black coffee, and cigarettes. Maybe you try aspirin. Maybe you chew on antacids. Maybe you hope for the best. Going to a doctor is admitting defeat. It's letting the company down, letting your paycheck down, letting your sense of toughness down. If you ever do get sick enough to stop, the solution is usually another diner, another bottle of something extra strength, or, if you're feeling especially vulnerable, maybe a nap in the cab while the engine idles and the clock keeps ticking. The long-haul lifestyle grinds you down in ways that don't show up until it's too late. High blood pressure, ulcers, heart attacks in men far too young. Friends disappear from the road, and nobody asks where they went. You hear a rumor that someone finally retired and hope it's true. Sometimes you just know they didn't make it, and still, you keep going, because there are bills to pay and the only reward for stopping is falling behind. So you swallow another pill, pour another coffee, and tell yourself you'll get checked out next week, next month, next year. You keep driving, aches and all, because that's what's expected. You've learned to ignore the warning lights on the dashboard and the warning signs in your own body. Out here, you're not paid to feel, you're paid to deliver. And that's the health fallout. You give a little more of yourself to the road every day, one heartbeat, one shaky hand, one restless night at a time. And you can't make this up. Finally, the sun comes up, pink light over the highway, birds singing like they're mocking you. You park the rig and sit there for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel like it's the only thing holding you together. You're alive. You made it. But instead of relief, you feel emptiness, because tomorrow you'll do it again, and the pills are waiting, and the road is endless, and sleep is still just a rumor. You sit in the driver's seat, engine ticking as it cools, and watch the sky fade from midnight blue to the washed-out gold of a new morning. The world is waking up. Somewhere, a farmer's tractor coughs to life. A store clerk unlocks a door. A child whines for breakfast. But you feel suspended, caught in the no man's land between one day's exhaustion and the next day's demands. The cab is stuffy. Your shirt is stuck to your back, and your body buzzes with leftover adrenaline and chemical residue. There's a strange stillness in this moment. You think you should feel triumph, or at least relief. But instead, there's just silence and the slow realization that you've crossed another invisible finish line with nobody there to see it. This isn't the finish of a race. It's just a checkpoint. The load gets delivered, the paperwork gets stamped, and somewhere an office manager checks a box without ever knowing your name. You try to stretch, but your muscles refuse. Your back feels fused to the seat. Your legs buzz with the memory of constant tension. You want to rest, but your mind is racing, full of half-finished thoughts and unfinished worries. You replay the close calls from the night before, every swerve, every hallucinated shadow, every moment when you almost nodded off for good. Your jaw aches from clenching, your temples throb, your eyes sting with exhaustion. Sleep should come easily. But when you crawl into the sleeper cab, darkness only brings more anxiety. Your body, trained to ignore tiredness, can't let go. Every sound outside, the slamming of a distant door, the clatter of another truck's air brakes, jerks you back to alertness. Your heart pounds, your fingers twitch, and you realize with a dull ache that sleep is something you have to relearn, not just claim. So, you settle for rituals. Maybe you fish out a stale donut from your stash, wash it down with the dregs of cold coffee, and try to convince yourself you're hungry. You scribble notes in your logbook, hands shaking as you try to remember every stop, every mile, every deadline. You call home, if you're lucky enough to have a payphone nearby, and try to sound upbeat for whoever's on the other end. You don't talk about the fatigue, the fear, the pills. You just say, "Made it. I'll call again soon." The world around you brightens, the lot filling with other trucks and drivers beginning their own routines. Some wave, some don't. You watch them for a while, caught between envy and camaraderie. They're all chasing the same thing: sleep, survival, the next payday. And none of them look rested. Not really. There's a brief window just before you finally collapse, when you wonder what it would feel like to stop for real, to just quit, to turn in your keys, dump the pill bottle, and walk away from the noise and the deadlines and the endless, grinding ache. But then you remember the bills, the obligations, the simple math that says you have to do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. So you close the curtain, pull the thin blanket up to your chin, and try to drift off. Maybe you dream, maybe you don't, maybe you just float in that weird, sleepless limbo, neither awake nor truly gone, waiting for the alarm to drag you back. Because the truth is, in the 1960s, rest isn't a reward. It's just a pause between laps in a race you never chose. Dawn isn't the end. It's a reset. And as you finally loosen your grip on the wheel, you realize the only thing more exhausting than driving all night is knowing you'll have to do it again and again and again. Out here, surviving until morning is just another part of the job. And you can't make this up. And so, tonight, you finally park that rattling steel beast of a truck, and you sit there for a moment longer than you need to. The engine ticks as it cools down, like it's still complaining about the day. Your hands are sore from gripping the wheel. Your eyes feel grainy, like they've been rubbed with sandpaper. Your brain is still buzzing, half from caffeine and half from the little speed pills that promised you energy but quietly demanded your health in return. You did it somehow. You crossed states, survived diners, navigated paper maps that were basically origami designed to humiliate adults, and stayed awake through the kind of night driving that turns human beings into blinking statues. You pushed your body past the point of logic because that's what the job required. Because in the 1960s, work-life balance meant you worked and your life waited patiently somewhere else. And as absurd as it all is, there's something strangely admirable about it. Because the world ran on the backs of people like you, people who hauled the freight, delivered the goods, and kept the entire machine moving forward even when their own bodies were begging them to stop. So tonight, as you sink into your clean bed with soft pillows, a safe room, and the luxury of being tired without needing to drive a 40-ton truck through the darkness. Maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the long-haul truckers of the past. The ones who survived diesel fumes, endless highways, and a culture that treated exhaustion like a badge of honor. And maybe as your eyes grow heavy, as the world fades quieter, you can let your mind drift. Because you're not on the road tonight. You're safe. You're home. And for once, you're allowed to sleep.